Always have a support structure that you can rely on, having people that can always deliver, and at the very least, those that can show progress on a daily basis.
Kita adalah brand holder. Kita kena yakin dengan brand kita. So sebelum kita nak meyakinkan orang dengan brand kita, kita kena yakinkan diri kita dahulu. So macam mana? Ilmu, knowledge. Pergi belajar. Tak belajar, tak tahu. Saya buka syarikat saya sendiri sebab masa itu saya yakin masyarakat tak boleh bergerak tanpa motivasi.
புதுசா வித்தியாசமா நீங்க யோசிச்சு ஒரு மார்க்கெட்ல டிமாண்டா இருக்கிற ப்ராடக்ட்டை நீங்க கொண்டு வந்தீங்கன்னா பயணியராகவும் ஆகலாம். அதே சமயத்துல மக்கள் திருப்பி வந்து உங்கள்கிட்ட வாங்கிட்டு இருப்பாங்க.
把你的生意放上网络平台，我朋友是做网络卖衣服的生意，他的生意是不断的在增长。我起步的时候是跟去银行贷款，所以他说我的规模也是太小，所以他是不接受我的贷款的。有一天我上网寻找贷款，然后过后就找到 IMSME， 过后我去 click 进去申请表格。第二天 CGC 的有一个顾问打来跟我说， 你可以尝试用 P2P 的平台，过后就成功了。
The great thing about this whole CGC ISME program is that it's no collateral and you can grow for as little as 1,000 ringgit to as much as 5 million. I went online and went to the page, registered, logged in, and just keyed in my details. And from there, within a matter of days, things were already set in motion. So it's really that straightforward and that simple. I was able to get it within a matter of weeks. I think everyone can too.
IMSME ஃபண்ட் வந்து நாங்கள் வந்து அப்ளை பண்ணியிருந்தோம், எங்களுக்கு கிடைச்சிச்சு. அது மூலிமா எங்கள் பிஸ்னஸையும் வந்து எக்ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ணோம். 10% வந்து இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணோம் எங்கள் சேல்ஸை. இது மூலிமா IMSME ஃபண்ட் வந்து ரொம்ப உதவியாக இருந்துச்சு எங்களுக்கு.
Sebenarnya dalam business, fun is everything. You have fun, you can go bigger. You don't have fun, you cannot go anywhere. CGC banyak membantu saya untuk saya go and move further sebenarnya. Dan at the end, saya dah ada branch baru dekat Alustah selepas saya dapat dana daripada CGC. I have no fun problem at all after that. Jadi dengan IMSME memang banyak sangat ubah hidup saya dan banyak membantu mengembangkan bisnes saya.
感谢 IMSME 帮我的生意更上一层楼。
Very good morning to all of you and welcome to the opening session of Star Media Group's Smart Retail Live Virtual Conference. Whether you are tuning in from Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Myra and I'm your host for this two-day conference. And most importantly, we hope that you continue to stay well, innovative as we enter the second year of our global pandemic lockdown. As we wrap up the first quarter of the year, how's 2020 treating you so far? Is your business already well adapted to the new normal, or are you still waiting for things to go back to normal? We'd love to hear from you, so please type in the chat box or in the comment section from wherever that you're watching. Why this event? Why Smart Retail? To understand our vision for this program, I'll take you back a few months ago to December of last year. As businesses have been rapidly transitioning and digitizing their business processes since the lockdown started, Star Media Group's Digital X Data Live Virtual Conference was designed to help businesses rebuild and recreate in order to thrive beyond the new normal. The December event featured 8 sub-themes, namely Smart City, Green, Retail, Manufacturing, Drone, Financial, Reach, People, and it was anchored by 4 power panels: Society 5.0, Businesses 2021, Cybersecurity, and Youth Empowerment. If you missed out or you would like to rewatch the sessions, please visit bit.ly/DXD playlist. In conjunction with Star Media Group's 50th anniversary this year, and as a follow-up to the Digital X Data 2020 Live Virtual Conference, we are spinning off by focusing on a few key business sectors which are impacted by the pandemic or with much potential in the next normal. The Digital X Data 2021 Road to Malaysia 5.0 program is dedicated to enabling digitally powered Malaysian businesses to accelerate growth in the new Malaysia 5.0 digital economy. And it also aims to drive innovative challenge among societies in building a human-centered nation powered by disruptive technologies. So, to kick off the Road to Malaysia 5.0 event series, we have the Smart Retail Live Virtual Conference. Our Smart Retail event program gathers 23 speakers of industry-leading subject matter experts, thought leaders, and senior business decision makers. We will take you on a 2-day journey to discover what is in store for retail as the nation moves beyond MCO 2.0. The program will revolve around key subjects such as women in retail, customer experience, online fraud and cybercrime, digital operations, and e-commerce and digital marketing. To learn more about the event agenda and speaker profiles, you may scan the QR code that is located on the top right of your screen or go to bit.ly/smartretailagenda. But most importantly, we hope you will learn more about the digital transformation in the retail sector and how your business can transition from merely adapting and surviving to thriving and winning. Ladies and gentlemen, this event would not happen without our esteemed sponsoring partners. So on behalf of Star Media Group, I'd like to give a special shout out to all the sponsors and partners of Smart Retail Live Virtual Conference, to our Terabyte partners, Ada, Brightcove, Dapat Vista, Forte, our Gigabyte partners, Credit Guarantee Corporation, Time.com, our knowledge partners, KPMG in Malaysia and NielsenIQ, our e-learning partner, eLearning Minds, and last but not least, our mobile messaging partner, SendQuick by Talaria X. So thank you all of you for coming on board with Star Media Group to make this event program a reality and enriching all of our lives, for me as well as for you watching at home safely. Guys, if you've attended any of our past virtual conferences, you would know that we ran prize draws at those particular events. And I'm excited to share with you that you are also running a special prize draw for each session of this event. We have a total of 12 cool gadgets to be given away. They are the the Skull Candy Jip Plus wireless earbuds, the D-Voo Macchiato Bluetooth speaker, and the Skull Candy push-through wireless earbuds. All you need to do is stay tuned with us until the end of each session, and you will stand a chance to win any of these 3 prizes at each of the 4 sessions of our event. Now, let's see what we have in store for you this morning. Our opening session of the event will be kicked off with an opening keynote by our knowledge partner, NielsenIQ. It follows with a presentation by a special guest from Retail NZ, who will be sharing about retailing in New Zealand through the COVID-19 pandemic. We will wrap up this morning with the undisputed power panel discussion. The Women in Retail panel will be participated by Fashion Valley and Duck Group, Lazada Malaysia, Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, and it will be moderated by a senior journalist from Star Biz. To learn more about the event agenda, speaker profiles, you may scan the QR code that is located at the top right of your screen or go to bit.ly/smartretailagenda. I hope you're excited with the program lineup that we have today for you. We'd love to hear from you housekeeping matters now before we begin. I'm sure as of now, most of us here are pretty familiar with online events, but as much as we strive to provide top quality production for our events, some things are just beyond our control. So please be patient if you experience any technical or internet glitches, and if you need any assistance from us, you may chat with our events crew, or you can also email us at events@thestar.com.my. If you have any questions for our speakers, for Zoom viewers, you may post it in the chat box, and for viewers on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, you may post it in the comment section. If any of our speakers do not have sufficient time to address your question, we will pass it to the speakers and we will deal with it separately. Lastly, and most importantly, please engage, learn, and enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, the onslaught of the pandemic has altered many facets of our lives. People across all walks of life have had to adjust their lifestyle. Technology has come to the fore in a big way, alleviating many challenges faced by consumers. And on the retail front, there was some level of online adoption. However, with the pandemic, our knowledge partner, NielsenIQ, sees a strong emergence of omni-channel behavior across FMCG and non-FMCG categories. This altered behavior is here to stay. And to kick off the conference, we will learn how to do this and how this will shape the future of retail in a big way. So our keynote speaker has over 24 years of experience in market research, strategic planning, and brand development. He currently heads NielsenIQ's consumer insights business in Asia, the Pacific, and China. He also globally leads the team servicing FMCG manufacturers, online and offline retailers outside of the US, qualitative research unit, as well as the global consumer insights data scientist. Wow, guys, he also accepts questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Arslan Ashraf. So stay tuned and he'll be back shortly. Bye.
Thanks, Myra, and good morning. Yes, we are living through the unprecedented times. This COVID-19 has greatly changed the shopping behavior and has also reshaped the retail landscape. But way before this COVID-19 pandemic was declared, the digital disruption was already increasing the share of e-commerce in the lives of consumers. So before I deep dive into the future of retail and how it is going to be impacted, I think it's important to understand that what were the emerging trends before the COVID-19 hit us. So the first one is that there was a steady online habits developing amongst the consumers. Although it was restricted to a fewer categories, but shoppers and consumers' path to purchase was already changing. You know, earlier, the typical path to purchase was starting with the awareness, led by the research, purchased by the advocacy, influenced by the mass media, and it was always culminating at one point inside the store. Not anymore. So this digital innovation and the social media has really changed the way consumers have built their preferences and they go about the shopping. So now the shoppers are more relying on the wisdom of the crowd. They are looking at the recommendation and the reviews of the online shoppers, other shoppers, and then making their own decisions. So that's the first factor which we saw, which was emerging before pandemic. Similarly, more and more shoppers are looking for an experience. They want to do things rather than just purchasing things because, again, they want to share online. So therefore, there was always a need for having more and more experience even before the COVID-19. There is something called fear of missing out. This is something which is very typical for the consumers and the shoppers, but this media explosion has actually increased the sense and the feeling of FOMO, fear of missing out. Yeah. So therefore, there is higher need for more and more experiences rather than just shopping the product. And at the same time, this digital innovation has made the physical and the linguistic distances irrelevant. Now consumers have more exposure, and as a result of that, they are becoming more and more experimentative. And then the fourth one, and the last but not the least, is that the consumers are favoring those products and brands which are environment friendly, who are actually very honestly sharing their ingredients, or they have a very ethical ways of doing business. So these were the four emerging trends which we saw before the COVID-19, and then we had the COVID. So what are the key factors which have impacted the shopper behavior? The first and the foremost is that technology has permeated into each and every walk of life. So whether it's work from home or homeschooling, which has helped us to roll the wheel of economy or educate the future generations, or telemedicine, or having all the entertainment in our mobile phone or in our device, online shopping, online banking. So everything is now technology driven. And at the same time, there is a lot of uncertainty also, because the economy has contracted, people have lost their livelihoods. Actually, one of the Nielsen surveys identified that every three persons in Southeast Asia have directly impacted by the COVID-19. And this has led to their adjusted lifestyle. So they are more opting for confined spaces. Virtual is always preferred over physical, and they want to cautiously spend also in the market. And lastly, there is a higher sense of personal hygiene and the care of the body. So these are the emerging trends which have impacted the overall shopping behavior also. As a result of all these factors, what we are witnessing is higher level of online shopping. So even categories like fashion and personal care have witnessed more than 60% growth. This is something which is captured by our recent e-commerce survey. Normal groceries are also having 50 to 60% growth at the overall level. And even the fresh groceries, which were earlier pretty much confined to the physical stores, around 50% of the people are now purchasing it online. So this heightened online shopping is leading to the emergence of this omni-channel in Malaysia. And one of our recent surveys has depicted that 86% consumers and shoppers, they are very comfortable in purchasing both online versus online. offline, sorry. And if we look at within the channel, the important point is that on the one hand, online is increasing significantly. As you can see that before COVID, it was 60%, but now it's in the range of almost 90%. But at the same time, physical channels are also not going down. And this is a great implication for the retailers as well as the marketeers. So consumers are taking both online and physical side by side. And if we just do some micro analysis, this is an interesting emerging trend that the categories are purchased in physical stores as well as online at the same rate. So even categories like dairy, which was earlier a very typical physical store category, is now equally purchased in the online setting. So that's something which is really emerging in case of the omni-channel behavior. But there are two more interesting things I want to highlight over here. If you look at the basket size for the online, it's slightly, it's better than the offline. So almost average spend is 340 ringgit versus 248 ringgit in the physical store. And the second point is that in physical stores, where shoppers and consumers, they have the option to pay in cash, they are now using the digital means. And this is very interesting because back in 2019, we did a research in terms of the cashless payment, and we found out that 2/3 were preferring cash when purchasing groceries. And now the behavior is completely opposite of that. So emergence of cashless and digital payment system is also reshaping the omni-channel behavior. So if I see that in totality, there is a huge influx towards the omni-channel behavior. So that is going to redefine the future of retail. So let's look into 3 key factors which are going to have a big impact in terms of the future of retail. The first and the foremost is the infrastructure and the business model planning, because as consumers and the shoppers are having the omni-channel shopping behavior, they want to have a seamless experience. So therefore, the right infrastructure and the business model is critical. Secondly, it is also very important to have the new go-to marketing strategy. The reason for that is that the traditional marketing cannot cater to this digital shopping behavior. And last but not the least, the data analysis and the insights capabilities is also becoming more and more critical, because we want to drive the satisfaction of the consumers, and that is possible when, based on the data and understanding of the shoppers, we can tailor-make the offerings to the consumers. So these are the 3 key factors or pillars who are going to define the future of retail. Let's have a review of this. So the first one is the infrastructure and the business model planning. Although the shoppers are now going in both physical as well as online, but still we find out that the drivers for physical shopping versus online shopping are different. So on the left-hand side, you see that what consumers and shoppers are looking for in an offline or physical store. So they want experience, they want instant gratification, they want interaction with the staff, and then they want to try the product and then have the option of returning the product if it is not satisfying their needs. Whereas on the online, it is convenience, product range, satisfaction, and attractive promotions. So what consumers are looking for is a seamless integration of online and physical. And that is possible if we are able to plan our infra as well as business model accordingly. By the way, I just want to highlight one very important point over here, that omni-channel does not mean that you should be present everywhere or you should be something for everyone. What it does mean is that you are present where it makes most sense and have the right touch points, and then execute it flawlessly. That is what is required. So hence, instead of building the channel strategies in isolation, like online strategy and offline strategy, we need to develop a common view, which means that there should be a seamless transition between online and offline. And this is possible if we make the shopper or the consumer at the center and then build the channel strategy around that. So that's something which is very, very important. So common view of the consumer. Secondly, that there has to be inventory optimization across online and offline. So that's the second very important point. And in future, some of the offline stores will become the demand fulfill center. And that's something which will play a big role to drive the omni-channel shopping habits. The third important point is to develop the network of partners. As a retailer or as a manufacturer, you don't need to invest at each and every point of the supply chain. Rather, you should have those partners who could help you for the demand fulfillment. And lastly, engagement at each and every touch point. You cannot have a strategy to engage customers only at one touch point and ignore the others. It has to be a holistic strategy. So that's something which is very critical with respect to the first factor, that is building the infrastructure and having the right business model. Let's look at a couple of examples. So one thing which we are looking at for the physical stores is that the golden stores are changing. So in our NielsenIQ's terminology, we call the stores golden stores for FMCG, which are responsible for 80% of the sales of the total FMCG bucket. Before COVID, those stores were located in the job districts or around the transit hubs. But due to the COVID, all shopping shifted to the proximity of homes. And in future, some will surely go back to office and therefore they will go back to their normal routine, but some will continue to work from home. So therefore, the store proximity or the store availability has to be redefined and has to be rechanged. Similarly, another way that the physical store owners are actually engaging in the online through using the by using the technology. So they are having ability to scan the code inside the store and put the products into the virtual cart. So whether the shopper can go and check out at the cash counter, or they can leave it in their virtual cart and check out later on, and then the retailers will be delivering it to their home. So that's how the integration of physical and online is going to happen. So that's the first factor. Let's move on to the second factor. So as we discussed, that the path to purchase is going to change, and it is going to be a hybrid path to purchase, not a straight line where there will be a role of physical as well as online. Therefore, the traditional marketing will not be able to generate the right results. So the marketing has to evolve so that we can deliver the right messaging at the right touch point. For example, as you can see, that one of our research shows that almost 2/3 of the consumers, they want to compare prices, they want to compare the specifications, or they want to see the reviews of others before making a purchase. So in that case, you can't just rely on traditional mass broadcasting. You have to personalize the message. You have to personalize, broadcast the message to the shoppers. And therefore, use of artificial intelligence or machine learning is going to play a very, very critical role. Similarly, some of the voice marketing tools are also play a very important role over here, as voice recognition products are emerging, and our ability to have voice recognition in a part of our devices is increasing. So be it iPhone Siri or Samsung Bixby or Google Home, all these devices, whether it's the personal assistant or is the speaker Alexa, like Amazon Alexa. So all of them are gonna play a very important role in personalizing the messaging, and then delivering those messages using AR and VR. I think that's going to play another important role in terms of the marketing. Let's look at a couple of examples over here. So based on the history and the search results, we will personalize the message, deliver it through AR, and then the shopper and the consumers, they will be able to evaluate the different option in the AR and VR environment and move forward around that. So another example is with respect to the voice marketing. As I said, that voice assistants and the smart speakers, they are exploding right now, and there is higher utilization by the shoppers and the consumers in this age, and therefore those voice marketing methodologies can also help us to personalize the message. So the key takeaway from the second factor is how to personalize the broadcast. And the third factor, which is going to play a very important role, is the use of data and analytics. And use of data and analytics will become absolutely critical in the future of retail, because not only attracting the customers is important, but also retaining them is very, very important. So this attraction and retention will be based on advanced analytics and then personalizing the offering for those customers. So building this quality customer database is going to be very, very important in the future retail. But not just the transaction data is going to be important. It is equally important to integrate that transactional data with the other sources of data, such as the consumers and shoppers' behavior, online perceptions, comments, and history of interaction with the different touch points. So therefore, Twitter data, Google data, or other sources of third-party data is also very critical to be integrated into the transactional data or the customer database. And then the third important point over here is that once we have understood the customer, then we need to have the means and capabilities to customize the offering to those to the consumers, and then have the ability to deploy those insights and make difference. So in this analytics and the database retail, there will be first step, which would be identification of the most profitable consumer cohorts, and then personalizing the offering to them and utilizing the technology to see that where it is going to make most impact. So for example, using that eye tracking, we can actually track the interest of shoppers on the online or offline aisle, and we can see that where their interest is the highest. In this case, as you can see, that the red zones are the areas where the customers have most of the gazing, and therefore we can optimize the sales of the products by looking at the areas where they are looking at and finding the way forward over there. So if I would like to summarize the future of retail, as I mentioned, that there are three most important factors and pillars which we need to focus on. The first one is the harmonization of online and offline. The online and the offline channel strategy should not exist in isolation. It should revolve around the customer, and therefore it should be a harmonized strategy for a unified experience across online and offline. The second most important aspect is that expanding the traditional marketing strategies and personalizing the messaging and having engagement with customers across the various touch points. And the third and also equally critical is having the data sets and insights for the customer's acquisition. That is a very important capability, and then driving their satisfaction throughout the customer journey process by the means of personalized offerings to them. So that's how we actually would like to see the future of the retail to evolve around. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Sorry, hi. Sorry for the delay there. I was just taking in all of the information. So there's harmonization, personalization, as well as data-driven systems across online and offline retailing systems, right? I think there's a question here. So these are really great options, and these are amazing. I think it's great to have all these new data-driven for. But personally, would you what kind of innovations in offline and online would you recommend for the Malaysian market, the Malaysian retail market specifically? If you could provide any insight.
Sure. So essentially, the shoppers want to purchase the products regardless of the channel, whether it's online and offline. So my point of view over here is that we need to make sure that the products which we are developing for our Malaysian customers, they should have a more integrated strategy across online and offline. I think this is something which is very critical. Right now, we do find a disconnect over here. So we have an online strategy and therefore online campaigns, online product, online assortment, and then we have a physical or offline strategy. And therefore, that those two strategies or those two channel plans are not talking to each other. I think it's critical that those two strategies should speak to each other and they become harmonized. So I think that's one of the most important thing. So if there is a challenge to have one product in one channel, but we can't replicate in another, then it would create a problem in future, because consumers and shoppers, they want to have a seamless experience. Yeah, I think that's something which is very critical.
Thank you, Arslan. There's also another question on methods of personalization and engagement. What are some of your recommendations for for Malaysians as well as Southeast Asians? Maybe a specific example of what you think would work in those two markets in terms of offline or online personalization, because we went through a few examples, but I'm curious to know what you think, because you have a lot of experience in this area too.
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. The important point is that we need to identify that in the path to purchase, whether it's physical or whether it's digital, what are the important touch points? And if we identify those important touch points, then we need to have specific messages for those touch points. I think this is something which is very, very critical for us, that we have identified the right touch points, and then we talk about we personalize messages on those touch points. So, for example, if we identified that the reviews on a certain online website is something which is very critical for the customers, then we should have some kind of messaging in the review section over there. So identify the right touch points on the customer path to purchase, on the customer journey, and then also highlight and also customize the messaging for those touch points. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I like that because I like innovation. So we have two audience. Questions. One is from Saji Rajapan from Zoom. Thank you so much for asking your question. And he asks, while I agree that more consumers are buying more things online is still only a small fraction of the total retail transactions in Malaysia and worldwide. I believe that it is still less than 10% in Malaysia. So his question is, does NielsenIQ see a big change in those numbers anytime soon?
Yeah, I think that's something which I shared in my slides at the start, that I agree with you that in certain FMCG categories, initially the online shopping was relatively low. So for example, dairy was very focused on the physical retail. But now if you look at the dairy purchase, there is hardly any difference between online and offline. Another example is the fresh categories. Earlier, fresh was all from the flea market or in the physical stores, but now there is almost equal purchasing happening in the online. So with this, adjusted lifestyle where consumers are restricted to go out, I think this is evolving. The online shopping is evolving, and this will continue to prevail. And the reason for that is that even when it become the relatively new normal, there will be a large chunk of customers who will be still working from home, because the organizations have seen that this model works. Even the employees think that this is like driving their satisfaction. So therefore, it is gonna be a future of retail where there will be both online and offline shopping happening simultaneously, side by side. Yep.
All right, thank you so much. And I know this is not statistics, but rhetorically, I bought this online, I bought this online, I bought this in retail. So I guess
Yeah. So we call it sample of one.
I'm a sample of one, yes. So we have another question. So this is from Vijendran Zoom pertaining to mom and pop shops. So he wants to know what are the barriers to entry for these mom and pop shops, and specifically for QR code enablement. So I hear that the partnerships needed with the service providers within the ecosystem brings up questions about end-to-end costs. So I think that's probably one of the worries. What are other barriers as well to these entries?
Yeah, I think that essentially the adoption of technology is gonna take some time in certain cases, because these mom and pop stores, they are very traditional stores, what we call the brick and mortar stores. So these brick and mortar stores, they are very traditional stores. But I think this adoption of technology has been accelerated because of the COVID. And I think you will see now that many of these mom and pop stores, they are also now accepting the cashless payments. And in future, they will see a lot more evolution on that front with respect to the QR code enablement or utilization of other technological means to drive the omni-channel behavior.
Thank you so much, Arslan. I think that's a pretty good question. Answer the question. We also have one question from Navanil. I hope that I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry. But this is a question from Zoom. Will behavior go back to normal, i.e., offline driven, in terms of post COVID-19?
I think this partially yes, because as I said that earlier, the golden stores were located in two important areas in the job district or around the transit hubs, but now they are moving towards the residential area. Once this COVID hopefully situation is over, I think there will be partial returning back, but a large chunk of customers will not go back to their normal means of doing things. So therefore, this new normal is here to stay, and it's probably gonna drive in future also.
Thank you so much. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's very important to harmonize and make sure that you have a good offline as well as online strategy to deal with retail in the coming future. We have no more questions, but I would like to thank everyone from Zoom for giving in your questions. Once we're done, I think we're done with the questions right now. We're done with the questions right now? Okay, cool. So that means that we're going to go off to the next section soon. I'll see you later. Thank you so much, Arslan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arslan. And actually, after we tuned off for the questions, we didn't have enough time, unfortunately. So we had a lot of questions coming from you guys. For those of you who did not get a chance to ask your question to Arslan, do not worry. Again, we will send the questions to Arslan, and then we will make sure that we get back to you. So thank you so much. And next, we have a very special treat for you. Our next speaker is dialing in all the way from New Zealand. Mr. Greg Hartford is the Chief Executive of Retail NZ, a non-profit incorporated society representing the interests of New Zealand's retailers. In this exclusive session, Greg will share with us an overview of the trends in New Zealand and the retail economy, as well as retailing in New Zealand through the highs and the lows of COVID-19. We hope you would enjoy this presentation and it would give you a different perspective of retailing in another market. And maybe you can adapt some of it here. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, Mr. Greg Hartford. Stay tuned.
Selamat pagi, Malaysia, or as we say here in New Zealand, kia ora koutou. I'm really pleased to be here this morning talking to you about retailing in New Zealand through the lows and highs of COVID-19. It's been a really challenging 12 months for everyone in the New Zealand retail market, as it has been for everyone in Malaysia and indeed globally. So this morning I was just going to talk through a few points. I was going to give you some context about the New Zealand retail market, talk about the impacts of COVID-19 and what that's done to retail spending here in New Zealand. I'm going to give you a little bit of detail about some of the lockdown regulations that have applied in New Zealand and what that's meant for retailers, and talk about how retailers here have really been trying to work hard to overcome COVID-19 through innovation, through e-commerce, and lots of hard work. I'll talk a little bit about key challenges in the New Zealand retail market and the outlook for the future. So first I thought I should just give you some quick information about New Zealand, because some of you may well ask, where is it? Well, we're that small group of islands to the east of Australia. We're about 3,000 kilometres from Sydney, and we're about 11 hours flying time southeast of Kuala Lumpur. Geographically, our islands make up about 268,000 square kilometres, and our population is really small. We're just 5 million people, but we make up for that with, of course, our 26 million sheep. In comparison, Malaysia, of course, as you know, is a lot bigger. You're 329,000 square kilometres, but you have many more people than we do. You've got 33 million people up there in Malaysia, but of course, not a lot of sheep, only 138,000 of them. So I guess just to give you a bit of context of the New Zealand market, we're relatively small. We're a long way from the rest of the world, but of course we do have what has been a thriving retail market here. I thought it would be useful just to give you an overview of what retailing in New Zealand looked like before COVID-19 hit us. Across the sector, we turned over about $98 billion worth of sales. That's New Zealand dollars, which is equivalent roughly to 282 billion Malaysian ringgit. So again, relatively small in global terms, but nonetheless a thriving market. Here in New Zealand, there are about 27,000 retail businesses that operate from about 35,000 sites. So again, quite a large number of actual businesses, but many of them are very small. Our total sales growth in the 5-year period from 2013 to 2018 was just 4.7%. So that's been relatively positive for the sector, but of course it's nothing like what you've seen in Malaysia. It's less than half the growth that you would have seen there over an equivalent period. One of the really interesting things about New Zealand is that although e-commerce is here and has been here for a long time, only a relatively small number of sales have actually been online. Just under 9% of all sales pre-COVID were done over the internet. Just to let you know too a little bit more about the New Zealand retail market, about 10% of all jobs in this country are in the retail sector. But half of retail businesses are owner-operators who employ nobody. That's right, they have no staff. It's just perhaps a husband and wife team or a family business. And there are just 345 retail businesses that employ more than 100 people. So what we've got is a very large number of very small retail businesses and a very small number of large businesses, which tend to dominate much of the retail activity. Average net profit margins in retail, as you know, are relatively low. Here in New Zealand, across the sector, pre-COVID, they were sitting there at about 3.9%. There's a little bit of variation in there. Some parts of the sector have a greater net profit margin than others, but on average, it's sitting there at 3.9%. So what did COVID-19 mean for New Zealand retailers? Well, it all started, of course, early last year in 2020, around January. We started detecting that there was a bit of an economic slowdown going on. The market was definitely not booming away as it had been in the latter half of 2019. International visitors to New Zealand were starting to dry up. We were seeing fewer people, fewer tourists and fewer visitors coming to New Zealand. And that was starting to impact retail sales. It also led to a bit of a confidence crisis. There were many New Zealand customers who were starting to think, oh, what's going on in China? What's happening with COVID-19 internationally? And people were just not getting out and shopping as much as we would have liked them to. So January was a bit gloomy from a retail sector point of view, but in February and March, we got into some pretty difficult situations. Overseas media drove panic buying through that period. In Australia, as you probably saw, there were almost riots over the sale of toilet paper in supermarkets. Here in New Zealand, we didn't have the physical violence that we saw over there, but we did have huge demand for basic products. Now, there was no need for that. All the products that New Zealanders needed to be able to buy over the coming months were always here and always available. But the media concern that was put there in the market really made consumers question, whether those products were going to be there. And they went out and they bought up large. There was a significant increase in grocery sales through that late February period in particular, and then into March. And the big issue from that was that it really stretched supply chains. Obviously, supermarkets and businesses are used to dealing with a certain amount of product. When you saw that volume or the demand from customers double or triple almost overnight, it was very hard for the logistics side of businesses to keep up with that. So it really did stretch supply chains. It did lead to some products not being on shelf, but that was because they were en route from distribution centres. New Zealand, like many other countries, adopted a system of lockdowns to COVID-19. There was a 4-stage alert system introduced by the government in March. Excuse me. That 4-stage alert system goes from level 1, which is, we've got to be really pretty careful, but everyone can carry on and do their business pretty much as usual, through to level 4, which was a very extreme lockdown. We went, much to many people's surprise, including my own, the New Zealand government decided to impose a level 4 lockdown pretty early on in the piece. From the 25th of March to the 27th of April, we were in a total lockdown here in New Zealand, and then a limited lockdown at level 3 continued through until the 13th of May. This was truly unprecedented for New Zealand. We've never had a situation where everyone in New Zealand has been told pretty much to stay at home. Unlike some of the lockdowns that we've seen in other markets, particularly in Europe, the lockdown here at level 4 was really very stringent. The instruction was very clear. Stay home, do not leave your home unless you are an essential worker or you are going to the supermarket. In many other countries, it's been permitted for you to leave your house to go to work. That wasn't the case here in New Zealand. So our 5 million people and our 26 million sheep were suddenly locked up for a period of about 6 weeks. The only shops that were allowed to open at level 4 were those that the government considered essential. That was to say pretty much supermarkets. The view from government, perhaps not really having thought it through in as much detail as we would have liked, was that you can buy everything you need to live at supermarkets. And then as we went through those first few weeks, there were a few changes made. Pet shops, for example, were allowed to open to sell food. Doctors were allowed to be prescribing goods, and pharmacies were allowed to open and so forth. But for the most part, it was really purely supermarkets. Supermarkets were the main source of retailing through that period, and indeed the only source of social interaction for many New Zealanders. We're quite a sociable people. We're often getting out and about. And I think it was very hard for many people to be locked at home under government orders for so many weeks. As I say, on the 27th of April, about a month after that really strict lockdown started, we moved to a level 3, much more limited. Businesses were allowed to open, but the instruction was that you still had to stay home if you could and work from home. While some businesses were allowed to open, retailers were not. Retail stores have to keep their doors closed at level 3, although e-commerce was permitted for the first time. And I should actually just mention here that while we were at level 4 in the first of the most severe lockdowns, e-commerce was not permitted either. So despite the fact that the risk of transmitting COVID-19 was pretty small, you'd have to say through some sort of e-commerce platform, it wasn't allowed for New Zealanders to shop online, or indeed for New Zealand businesses to fulfil orders from customers. The only exception, again, were supermarkets and pharmacies. New Zealand's lockdown journey ended in the middle of May last year. There were no cases of COVID-19 here in New Zealand. That was really good news. We came out of the level 3 lockdown, moved into level 2, which was quite cautious, but most businesses were allowed to reopen then. And all seemed to be going fairly well. But we have subsequently had 3 more limited level 3 lockdowns in Auckland, our largest city. Those lockdowns happened in August of last year, and then February of this year, and again towards the end of February and into March of 2021. Those lockdowns for the retail sector were enormously disruptive because, of course, it meant that the retail businesses needed to close their doors. They weren't allowed to have customers come in the store. And the only way that retailers are able to serve customers during level 3 is to offer an online service or a click and collect service or even a phone order service. And the challenge with it, I think, has been that these lockdowns have been implemented very quickly by government, typically. There's not been a lot of notice, and everyone in the retail industry has had to be scrambling very much to try and implement government decisions. There's quite a lot involved in closing down a retail business when that instruction comes almost overnight or same day. And it's been very challenging for many businesses to get their head around. Now, you may well ask, well, what has been the outcomes of all these lockdowns on the retail sector? Well, of course, as you'd expect, when we were at level 4, retail sales absolutely collapsed. We saw about an 80% fall in retail sales over that period. At the same time, of course, retailers had fixed costs that they needed to continue meeting. There was rent to be paid, there were staff to be paid, there were suppliers and support organisations that needed to be paid. The response of many was to be thinking about reducing the number of employees, to be making people redundant, or to be reducing the hours that they were paying people for. The New Zealand government came to the party pretty quickly with a support package. It was called the wage subsidy, and it came into effect actually even before the lockdown itself. And that provided a good amount of cash to help businesses pay their people through this very difficult time. So that meant that actually we didn't see the job losses that we might have expected. Certainly early on in the lockdown, I was predicting that we might have seen 10 or 20,000 job losses through the sector. That hasn't eventuated, and in large part it's because of the wage subsidy that the government put in place and the support that it offered to New Zealand retailers. One of the real problems with the level 4 lockdown, though, was that the rules were really strict, as I say. The rules banned online trading as well as the distribution of logistics goods, even for businesses where people worked at home. If you're a small e-commerce retailer, for example, and you operate out of your garage or your spare bedroom, you weren't able legally to service your customers, sell your goods, or get your product out the door. That's really damaging for a retailer. There was significant demand for goods from consumers, and it was increasingly difficult, I think, for the government to maintain its social license as we went through this period. As I say, there was a lot of pressure on government, and we did see a loosening of the classification of essential goods as we went through those difficult weeks of lockdown, but stores still had to stay closed. When we moved on, as I say, to the level 3 lockdown light as I've called it here, stores had to stay closed, but e-commerce and click and collect was permitted. Cafes and restaurants were able to operate, but to provide takeaway, food and delivery only. And what we saw really through that period was huge innovation as retailers rushed to go digital. We saw new websites being launched. We saw businesses going online for the first time. We saw people setting up systems for customers to order products and goods through text messaging. And we even saw the establishment of what I think was the country's first drive-through garden centre. As you can see in the picture here, you had people literally driving through the car park of garden centres, selecting the plants that they wanted to be able to take home. Here in New Zealand, the lockdown happened to coincide with our autumn period. So actually the weather was really good, and there were lots of people who were wanting to get outside. So our friends here in this garden centre were able to meet that need by innovating into that drive-through arrangement. What we saw, of course, at level 3 was a huge explosion in online sales. New Zealanders had basically been kept at home for a period of some weeks without being able to go to the shop, without being able to buy new clothes, without being able to buy necessities. If you couldn't get them from a supermarket, pretty much you couldn't do them. But as we moved into level 3, we really saw the volume of sales online increase very dramatically. It was the only way for customers to be buying goods. We think, we don't have good data on this, but we think that the total volume of sales online during alert level 3 was pretty much double what it had been just a few weeks earlier. And most interestingly, I think, for our market, they've remained high. As I say, we don't have good data on exactly what volume is being done online, but we think about 17% of all sales by volume are now being made through e-commerce channels. That's really exciting for New Zealanders because it means that there are more retailers getting on board with e-commerce. There are more customers who have been seeking to go digital and shop online. They've found that experience has been a positive one, and they've continued to do it. And that's been a bit of a systemic change in the market here. It did, of course, raise a whole lot of logistics issues because, again, the volume of product that was now being sent from New Zealand retailers out to their customers doubled overnight as well. That put huge pressure on the courier networks, on the transport networks, and it took quite a while for those issues to settle through as the freight companies worked hard to clear backlogs and adjust very much to the new normal. Interestingly enough, although the internet obviously has been around for a long time now, there were actually many New Zealand retailers that hadn't embraced it. Before COVID-19 had hit us, we think about 45% of retailers, so nearly half of all retailers here in New Zealand had no e-commerce capability. The really interesting thing is that half of those have since established it. So many businesses that hadn't previously been operating in that digital space now are. There are some for whom it doesn't really make sense. Takeaway coffee business, for example, might not want to put in place an e-commerce website to facilitate the sale of a cup of coffee. But many of those sorts of businesses are actually taking orders through SMS messaging as well. There have been a number of interesting different models that retailers here in New Zealand have used for going digital and embarking on that digital journey. We've seen a range of bespoke builds, but they're quite expensive. But we've seen retailers going online just via social media to try and win customers who might have been following them on social, but to turn that into a sales opportunity. And of course, we've seen a huge number of businesses pick up on the likes of Shopify and build their websites using those pre-existing platforms. They've been really advantageous for many Kiwi businesses because there's a relatively low cost to set those sites up, as you know, and they are pretty effective at servicing the needs of customers. There has been a real issue in New Zealand with digital capability in the retail sector. At the larger end of town, the major retailers are certainly very well attuned to the needs of the e-commerce customer. But for many of those small businesses, and if you remember that half the businesses here in New Zealand are family-owned businesses that employ no staff at all, for many of those businesses, it's quite challenging, quite daunting to be going online for the first time. And there's a lot to learn about that. And obviously we've been doing our bit to help our members with advice and information on how to do that. One of the really interesting things I think that we've seen as the e-commerce volumes have jumped up and increased substantially is that e-commerce has not only helped drive and build some revenues coming into businesses through those digital channels, but it's also actually driven foot traffic as well. Some of those firms who weren't previously online have worked out that actually having a website is a really good thing because it allows customers to view your goods, see your full range of products, understand what the pricing is, and then come in store to buy them. So that's been a real positive that's come out of it for some of those who have gone down that journey. It's fair to say, though, that e-commerce, while it's certainly been a key factor at helping the New Zealand retail sector continue to survive and thrive through this period, it isn't a substitute for bricks and mortar. There's still a real desire by Kiwi consumers to go to the physical shops to touch and feel the goods that they want, and I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. But it is really interesting to see that the level of increased e-commerce activity has certainly been sustained, I should say, post that lockdown period. I thought it would be useful perhaps just to give you a bit of an overview of what we've seen happening to total sales over the period. What I'm about to show you is the Retail NZ Sales Index. This is information about sales from Retail NZ members who bank with Westpac, and it represents the average value of sales per site at Retail NZ members. As you can see on the left-hand side of that chart there, back in March, we saw a big contraction in retail spending of, I think, about 7% at the time. That was pretty significant and reflects that economic malaise that we were talking about earlier. In April, sales plummeted by 80%. That was when we were into that harsh level 4 lockdown. And then even in May, sales were still down compared to the previous year. That's because the shops weren't able to open, and e-commerce, while it helped and certainly kept some businesses on their feet, it wasn't an effective substitute for getting customers out to the shop. Part of that too is around customer confidence. COVID-19 has been hugely disruptive all over the world, and many customers, I think, particularly in those early days, were very nervous about going out. They didn't want to be interacting with people, and they were worried that they might catch COVID, so they just stayed home. And many people thought that their jobs were on the line too, and that their incomes were threatened, so that would have been a factor, and that reduced spending. If you move across that chart into August, you'll see the next red circle there. That was when we had our second level 3 lockdown in Auckland. The really interesting thing is that while there was a significant drop in spending in the week that Auckland was locked down, in the period that Auckland was locked down, it lasted for a number of weeks. Overall, in August, results were still relatively positive, I think about 8% up on the previous year. If you fast forward through to February this year in 2021, on the far side of that graph, again, you see good solid spending in February, notwithstanding the fact that Auckland was locked down for a number of days during that period. The second lockdown in February happened towards the end of the month and into March. We don't have sales numbers for that yet, but I think we will see a bit of a hit in spending, but it will still be positive relative to last year. There's been a lot of pent-up demand whenever we've been going into lockdown. Customers have needed to buy goods, and you know, like many customers globally, people here in New Zealand want to be able to get goods and stay current as often as possible. So that's the picture of month-by-month spending that we've seen over the last 12 months. The really interesting thing is that if you start aggregating those sales numbers over a period of time, overall spending is actually up by a total of 6.7%. Since between March 2020 and March 2021, spending was up 6.7% compared to the previous year. I'm sorry, there is an error on that slide. It says since March 2019, but actually it's the period from March 2020 to March 2021. Total spending has increased a little under 7%, we think, compared to the same time the previous year. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. First, it's about the effectiveness of the government's lockdown strategy here. At the moment, New Zealand is free of community transmission of COVID-19. That means that customers can and do get out and about. They go shopping. The economy is relatively healthy. And things are going broadly well. There's been significant economic stimulus pushed into the market by the government, significant money to support wages, to support individual businesses, and a lot of cash has been flowing out of the government coffers and back to consumers and businesses. So that's really helped stimulate some of the spending that we've seen. The other thing that's really interesting about New Zealand is that our borders are closed. If you are not a New Zealand citizen, you are currently unable, pretty much, to come to New Zealand. That's a big change for us. We're a country that has long been reliant on international tourism and indeed international education as key drivers of the economy. So when the government closed the border in March last year, it was a deeply unprecedented situation. For the retail sector, though, I think it's had some advantages. It means that while we don't have international tourists coming into New Zealand to spend, it has meant that New Zealanders stuck at home are spending instead of travelling overseas themselves. On average, New Zealand is a net beneficiary of tourism. Tourists coming into New Zealand spend more than New Zealanders take away and spend overseas. But the interesting thing is that they spend in different places. International tourists come here, they spend in the hospitality sector, they hire hotel rooms, they go jet boat riding, they do skydiving and paragliding and take scenic flights up into our beautiful mountains. New Zealanders are less likely to do those things, but what we have seen over the last 12 months is that Kiwis have been getting out, they've been spending and supporting their local shops. We've seen significant jumps in spending really right across much of the sector: homeware, hardware, books and games, toys to entertain the kids. Lots of areas of really discretionary spending have been the beneficiaries of the closed borders. However, and there is an however here, while overall spending is up, the mix of spending has really changed, and there are businesses that are suffering significantly. I think about a third of retail businesses are probably not performing and not seeing benefits that we're seeing across the nation at an aggregate level. So there are some businesses that are performing really well, and there are some businesses that are performing really badly. There are kind of three kinds of businesses that are not doing so well at the moment. First is those in central cities. So our three big cities are Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. Workers have been slow to return to their offices in the CBDs. Workplaces have become a lot more flexible. There's a lot more working from home. That means that there's much less foot traffic about, and people are less likely to be spending during their lunch breaks. If you are a business in a tourist destination, particularly somewhere like Queenstown in the South Island, famous for its mountains and its lakes, if you're in Rotorua in the North Island, famous for its boiling mud and its geysers and its volcanic activity, or if you're down the scenic coast, the west coast of the South Island, you are really suffering hard. Those towns, even if they're offering a service which may be of interest to New Zealanders, those towns, small towns, have been very heavily reliant on international visitors for a very long time, and they're just not here at the moment, and that's very difficult for those businesses to survive. Finally, if you are a tourist-oriented business, if you are selling souvenirs to international visitors, for example, you are not in a good space, and it's very, very difficult for you to continue trading, because the reality is that New Zealanders don't typically buy souvenirs of their trips around New Zealand. And we are starting to see shops close. I took this photo here just on Saturday in a town a little bit north of Wellington, at the bottom of the North Island. I don't know if you can read the sign there, but it's a New Zealand souvenir shop. It's empty. And we will see more businesses close, I think, over the coming few months. We do regular research with our members, and one of the questions that we've been asking is about how confident businesses are. Until COVID had hit, we would never have dreamed of asking this question, but we regularly survey and we ask, how confident are you that your business will survive the next 12 months? What's really interesting from this chart is that it shows that when we have a lockdown, even if it's just a limited lockdown in Auckland, our major city, we see a big and very sudden drop in retail confidence. There's really a view that we need to keep the economy going, we need to keep businesses open in order to keep turning over revenue, and in order to keep ultimately employing New Zealanders. These numbers are a little bit scary. We've got something like 37% of retailers telling us that they're either not sure if their business will survive the next 12 months. Some of them are saying it could go either way. And about half of those are not confident, or not at all confident, that their business will be there in 12 months. Those are scary and concerning numbers for our sector. There's a lot of notwithstanding the good economic performance that we've seen across much of the sector, there is a lot of hurt out there. And businesses have consumed many of their reserves over the last 12 months. It was difficult to recover from the first lockdown last year. It was harder to recover from the second lockdown in August if you were an Auckland business. And then it becomes incrementally harder the more you go on. There've now been, as I say, 4 lockdowns affecting Auckland, and each one is harder for a small business to recover from. So looking ahead, what are the key challenges for New Zealand retailers? Supply chains and logistics, I think, are increasingly the #1 issue. New Zealand, as I say, is a small country. We're at the bottom of the world, and we're heavily reliant on foreign shipping lines to get goods down to New Zealand. Unfortunately, at the moment, we've seen significant congestion at our major port in Auckland. There are huge delays getting product off ship and into distribution centres, and at the same time, we're seeing significant cost increases coming through as a result of that. We're also seeing shipping lines conclude that it's too difficult to keep product coming down to New Zealand in the same way that they had before, and we're seeing capacity being cut because that capacity can be better used on on larger routes, perhaps to North America or to Europe. For retailers, there are also substantial issues around cost increases. The cost of products is going up. Cost of manufactured goods is going up, the cost of shipping is going up, and at the same time, cost of employing people here in New Zealand is increasing substantially. The government is just finishing this week a project to increase the minimum wage to 20 New Zealand dollars an hour. That's up from $15.75 just 3.5 years ago. So there's been a massive jump in the cost of employing people, and there are extra costs coming down the track due to changes that the government's making in relation to things like paid sick leave entitlements and so forth. Reopening the borders is going to be challenging for New Zealand retailers. For some businesses, it will be a heaven-sent opportunity to get some of their business back. There is talk of a bubble with Australia, so that Australian visitors will be able to come to New Zealand without going into quarantine first. If that happens, that will be a huge boon to businesses serving that tourist market. However, on the flip side of that, there is a question about what it will mean for the rest of the retail sector. We've seen over the last 12 months that New Zealanders, when they're stuck here at home and not able to travel abroad, spend up domestically. It's a real question about when the borders open, whether that will continue to happen or whether we will see a significant sum of that spending moving offshore once we're able to get back into Australia or perhaps further afield. I think that it's going to be quite a long time before the borders open fully. Australia is definitely, I think, top of the government's list for getting things open, but we need to see what happens internationally. It's important to remember, I think, if you're here in New Zealand, that we are very fortunate compared to many countries overseas. COVID-19 is not present here in New Zealand. There's no community transmission of it at the moment. We've got a good secure border called the Tasman Sea and the Pacific Ocean all around us, and that makes it really quite easy to try and contain the virus and keep it out. But of course, from an economic point of view, we need to get the borders back open at some point. The broader economic environment is pretty challenging too, I think, for retailers. The other factor that we've seen is that interest rates have been very low over the last 12 months. That's encouraged a bit of a boom in the housing market. There have been some changes announced by government this week that may fundamentally alter some of the basics of the housing market and make it less reduce the price of housing, essentially, is the intention. We'll see where that goes, but as New Zealanders' house prices have increased, people have tended to feel a little bit wealthier if they've owned property. If there's pressure on those prices, it may well lead to the reverse as well, and we may see that consumers are perhaps a little bit less willing to spend. So in terms of the overall outlook for the New Zealand retail market, well, I think the key thing that's come out of COVID-19, we knew this anyway, but I think it's doubly true as a result of COVID-19, is that online is here to stay and will keep growing. We will see more and more e-commerce happening. For New Zealand businesses, they really need to jump into that digital mainstream because that's where their customers are going and that's where their competitors are as well. New Zealand, of course, is a small country. We don't have a huge number of large retailers, but New Zealand customers do and can shop online offshore for goods. So there's a real incentive for New Zealand retailers to get in there and compete hard online. I think we potentially could see more lockdowns. Key message, I think, for everyone in the New Zealand retail sector is plan for the worst. We thought that we were through this COVID-19 situation, and then in August we were back in lockdown. We thought we were through it until February, and then we were back in lockdown. Then again, we came out of it, we went back into lockdown. at the end of February. So I think it's a very blunt instrument, but it is one that the government is prepared to wield to combat COVID-19, and retailers need to be planning for that. The other thing I think we'll see over the next 12 months or so is more efficiencies through store closures. Businesses will be looking to cut costs. They will be looking to recover some of the extra things that are hitting the cost side of their ledger. One of the ways they can do that is closing stores or reducing their retail footprints. I think CBDs, central business districts in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch are most at risk of that. There are significant numbers of retailers that are looking to exit some of their premises. Here in Wellington, the major department store David Jones is kind of the anchor tenant of our high street here, and it will be closing its doors next year. That's going to leave a big hole in that retail space. It's going to be very difficult to fill that. The other thing that we will see over the next little while too is a little more inflation creeping into the market. Retail, as you all know, is a really competitive business. That pressure of online trading and what's happening with your online competitors from overseas has been really effective at keeping a lid on prices. But here in New Zealand, the costs are increasing very substantially, and ultimately they are going to start being passed on to customers. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope that's been interesting and useful for you to hear about the New Zealand COVID-19 experience. It's been 12 months of difficult trading for many here in the New Zealand retail market. And I'd really invite you to get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
very much, Greg, for that little window into what's happening in the retail industry in New Zealand. Hopefully you can see some similarities as well as some differences to our situations in your own countries and take what you can from it. And if you need more to learn, don't worry. We here at the Smart Retail Conference are here to help you through it. And on that note, I am very personally excited for the next session. We are honored to have this panel as a part of the opening session. This panel is going to be joined by powerful and like-minded women leaders who will be discussing the current retail ecosystem and its business outlook. They will also be sharing their experiences, challenges, success stories, and ultimately how women can be a great force to drive the digital journey of the retail and services industry, empowering the nation's digital economy. Some of these women are personally responsible for my online shopping habits during COVID-19. So let me introduce you to them. Our first guest is co-founder of Fashion Valet and the Duck Group. She is also the group creative director of Fashion Valet, and she is none other than Vivi Yusof. Founded in 2010 as a fashion e-commerce company, the Fashion Valet Group today has opened 10 retail stores and counting, while Duck has opened stores in KLCC, Setia City Mall, One Utama, and Haji Lane in Singapore. Our next guest has over 20 years in the advertising, digital media, ad tech space in Southeast Asia. Ms. Diana Bu, currently, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Lazada Malaysia, brings an extensive digital marketing experience with proven track record in partnership management and business growth. Prior to Lazada, Diana helmed country manager for iFix Malaysia and Brunei. Our third guest was recently named among the world's 50 most influential people, revolutionizing governance by Apolitical and World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Agile Governance. Surina Shukri, the Chief Executive Officer of Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, brings 2 decades of work experience, including global MNCs, mid-market companies, and early-stage startups across the financial services, natural resources, and technology sectors. Lastly, but not least, the panel moderator, Yvonne Tan, the Assistant News Editor of StarBiz. And Yvonne has been in finance writing, research, and reporting for 16 years. This is a definitely very powerful panel discussion and not to be missed because I want to know how they managed to get me to spend all that money. I'm happy, but the panel is getting ready, so please stay tuned and we'll be back shortly.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Our discussion today is about the retail industry, in particular, women in retail. It's been said that although women make up more than half of the workforce of major, less than 3% of these companies actually have female CEOs. Today's conversation will center on the increasingly important role of women in retail, success and failure stories, as well as how the retail industry will help power up the digital economy in the country. All right. Welcome everyone on board. Vivi, Diana, and Surina. Would you guys like to just give a brief introduction about yourselves again, just very briefly? Maybe you could start with Vivi.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here at this conference. My name is Vivi Yusof. I am a retailer. I am the co-founder of Fashion Valet and Duck that dabbles in modest fashion. We started online 10 years ago, and now we have retail stores. So we're trying to build an omni-channel global brand.
Great. Diana?
Hi, I'm Diana, Chief Marketing Officer of Lazada. Been kept very busy for the last year since COVID hit us. So it's exciting times, and very excited to be here, having Vivi and Surina on the panel along with us. So very happy to be here and look forward to a fruitful session.
All right.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Surina Shukri. I'm the CEO of Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, or MDEC. We're a government agency, and my job is to help spur, or rather accelerate digital development, and to make sure that folks like you all, Diana, Yusuf, Vivi, Star, and everybody in the digital economy succeeds.
All right. Okay, so we can all agree that the past 1 year, it's been very different, right, from the previous years. I mean, with the COVID and the NCO and things like that. So what, in your view, has been the most challenging part in the past 1 year? I mean, for a business, Vivi, what has been your most challenging moment?
Yeah, well, last year was such a blur, Yvonne. Honestly,
Right.
last year, because we're in the fashion industry, it was such a roller coaster. Firstly, obviously, we're in fashion, so we were very badly affected. Our sales went down, I think, in the beginning, almost 50%. No one wanted to buy new clothes during a pandemic. And shoes. Who wants to buy shoes? Go
Right.
right. And scarves is a large contributor to our business, so nobody wanted to buy scarves because they're at home, right? And this happened during Ramadan, so it was the worst time possible. And because that's our peak period, that's our bread and butter, right? So it did affect us. And secondly, I think there were a lot of uncertainty on the retail sector. Can open shop, cannot open shop, can open shop.
Open and close, right? Yes.
Yes. So I guess the biggest challenge is really dealing with the uncertainty. Targets were obviously out the door. It had to be revised like constantly. We had to pivot all products. And the biggest fear for me, as a business owner and as an employer, was to make sure we didn't have to retrench anyone.
Right.
So we had to be transparent. Everybody knew our financial position and what sales target to meet. And it was regular updates with the team. And alhamdulillah, like we managed to weather through. Moving to 2021, looking back in 2020, our worst time ever, we not only did not retrench anyone, we also did not impose any salary cuts.
Wow.
So I think that itself, I'm very grateful, and it's such a lesson for all of us that we really can get through anything.
Okay, Vivi, how big is your organization and how many people do you employ?
We have about 200 people.
200 people. So all 200 people in tech?
In tech?
Right.
No, so there's tech, there's the retail.
No, in tech, as in like you didn't cut any jobs. And
right, in tech.
They were no,
There were no salary cuts and no retrenchment. And being in fashion, I think that's no easy feat.
I think you also had some launches, right? Lately, yeah.
We have launches almost every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is, there's demand obviously if you're having launches.
Yeah. So I think we had to be smart in product pivot. And during Ramadan, that was not easy because a lot of our product planning takes 6 months to 12 months in advance. So we had already committed to products, and then COVID happened, and we're like, okay, we have a whole bunch of baju kurungs. We have to sell it for Ramadan, right? So honestly, it wasn't ideal, but we had to do a lot of discounts. We had to do a lot of bundles, and whatever we could. We haven't committed with the supplier. We changed up the product, so more loungewear, more essentials like sanitizers, masks, and more easy to wear scarves for the
right.
A lot of pivots.
So you managed to sustain the level of business, would you say, with all that pivoting, or you still saw a plunge in your sales?
We did, but honestly, it's not that bad. I think about 10%.
Okay. Oh, okay, that's not bad at all.
So I'm really proud of the team. I think they predicted well in advance that, okay, we have to change now, and everyone was on board. It was amazing.
Okay, right. Diana, how about Lazada? I mean, what has been the biggest challenge?
So last year was definitely a year of rapid change, right? Like Vivi said, I think COVID-19 hit us quite significantly.
Right.
A lot of businesses rather,
Yes.
and we saw consumer shopping habit change, and more people shifting online for their essential needs, and therefore accelerated the adoption of e-commerce, right? So before this, the digital transformation and digitizing of the business model is actually very challenging for some of the businesses.
Right.
They need to put in resources that they never had in the past, and they build new skills. So they have to pivot very quickly, like we said, right? The consumer change, its behavior is changing online, and they have to sustain their business. And we saw, actually, whatever Vivi said, we also saw the trend of fashion as a category does see a dip. But grocery was growing, right?
Okay.
So when the pandemic really hit us, and then when MCO was going back, Lazada, we quickly think about like where are the areas that we can actually jump in and quickly help the SMEs, right? So that's where we launched our package Kedai Pintar, which is a stimulus plan. And through that plan, we saw 300% increase in new sellers onboarded last year, and they began to realize the distinct advantage of leveraging e-commerce to diversify their revenue streams. And even after like MCO was lifted, or rather we went into the multiple types of MCO. People continue to stay online, and they are now able to offer their business, or rather their products to customers, whether it's online and offline. So we do see them being able to diversify their revenue streams in the rising demands, and they're able to offer the online shopping and boosting the digital economy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but Diana, I would think that Lazada would have seen a surge, or did Lazada also see a decrease in sales over the past 1 year? I mean, overall.
No, we didn't. So actually, the overall business, or rather the digital economy has grown, because you see the consumers that have come online has grown, right?
Yeah.
So we're not the only e-commerce platform. Everyone's got their own,
favorite, right?
Yeah, exactly. So everyone's got their own favorite, and there are also small businesses that start up. And there are other local e-commerce provider that came up, and delivery services and so on. So I think the growth is there, and everyone's that has that e-commerce channel are enjoying the growth. And Lazada's not like, our revenue did not we don't really talk about this very much.
Yeah.
It's still on an upward trend growth of multiple axes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I can set some broad macro context to that. So clearly, last year, a crazy year, the whole world was not able to move, and so therefore, when it comes to business, online businesses was the way that consumers actually and businesses would transact. So that's the power of digital right there, connecting buyer and seller. So what we saw last year was the rise in e-commerce. And so in fact, the official statistics are not out yet, but what we saw was the GMV of the e-commerce industry almost more than doubled last year alone. And Google has put out some statistics saying that we saw 5 years worth of consumer digitalization in that 1 year alone. So everybody now is much more comfortable buying online. And so therefore, the big challenge really is how do you transact in a world that's digital by default? So if you are savvy like Vivi, very good at pivoting, they know what to do. But we've got a large swath of the economy where it's primarily retail. So our retail sector, our SMEs and micro SMEs now all of a sudden are saying, oh my God, it's digital by default. What do I do?
Right.
Before, in years prior, I'm sure Lazada, you would agree as well. We're always telling people, come la, go online, come la, go online. But last year was literally the year everybody was going around saying, yo, how to go online? How to go online? And so therefore, one of the things that we did last year to help overcome this challenge was a nationwide campaign. It was one of the programs under the stimulus plan Penjana. So Penjana in particular, and it's partnering with the private sector, companies like Lazada and Fashion Valley even, help onboard micro SMEs onto online.
Okay.
So last year alone on the seller side, more than 245 companies benefited from this, and about 45,000 new micro SMEs were onboarded to different e-commerce platforms, including Lazada, Shopee, and others. And then on the consumer side, we also saw a large increase. We had this campaign called Shop Malaysia Online, and so in that 6 months alone, 1.2 billion of sales coming from about 7.5 million consumers. So they're all like on board on this e-commerce journey.
So you would say that last year, I mean, it was a huge jump in terms of okay, all right, interesting. Okay, let's get on to the crux of the discussion, which is basically women in retail, right? So in your view, right, as women business people, how uneven is the distribution of women leaders versus men leaders in the retail industry? Is there an obvious gap, or do you think it's closing, or do you think it doesn't exist? Maybe Vivi, you could just
sure. For me, I think Yvonne, like we've become a fair way but we still have a long way to go. I'm not sure of the stats exactly for retail sector, but I think largely the businesses in Malaysia, I was reading this news article where in 2016 it was 15% women leaders, and now it's 30-something%. So we've doubled, and so there is definitely progress, which is great. Even in your the STAR, the virtual conference banner for the retail, right? I see a good mix of male and female leaders, so that's something to say as well. That's great, right? So from my own experience as well, being a retailer myself, I deal with people in the retail industry, and I've got to say, I've met a lot of amazing women in retail. One example is Dato' Joyce, who basically runs Pavilion.
Pavilion, yeah.
And very, very good at her job as well, right? So I do think, having said that, there needs to be more increase in women leadership, and there are many role models already, right? It's been generations and generations of gender disparity. But what's great is that there's a lot of conversation around it now. So I think what women need help with right now is to help level the playing field. But once level, then base us on merits. I don't think any woman wants to have a seat at the table to fill a quota. You know, I think we want to be there because of merit. So I always tell women I meet, especially the young ones, make full use of the seat at the table, engage, talk, discuss, rise with substance and not with fluff, you know.
Right. Okay. That's true. Sorry?
I said
on something?
Yeah, I said on the entrepreneur side though, we are seeing lots of female entrepreneurs in the retail space. Very, very encouraged by that. I'll share again another statistic. So we have this program called e-Usahawan, which is literally teaching micro entrepreneurs how do you start your digital journey online. So with digital marketing, for example. So over the years, we've helped train 365,000 people. 65% of that is female entrepreneurs. In addition to that, the other really encouraging female entrepreneur statistic is what we're doing in the rural space, the rural e-commerce. And so last year we started piloting some one-stop digital centers, primarily for rural entrepreneurs. 79% of them are female entrepreneurs. So we're certainly very, very excited and encouraged by that statistics. I think generally speaking, retail in particular, you see a lot of female representation.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to the third question. What kind of advantage do women leaders have over their male counterparts when it comes to running a business? I mean, obvious question, but not so obvious. What kind of advantage?
Maybe I can contribute to that. So
yeah,
I don't want to go into women versus men thing. It's not about that.
You don't want to start a
war. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I actually think women and men are built differently. I really do believe that. And I love to read. I even do book reviews on YouTube. But recently I read this book called The Female Brain that basically confirms my belief that women's brain and men's brain are different. And it's found that women crave more the emotional connection. So women are great at connecting with people and understanding the emotions behind everyone and every situation. So I feel this is a great advantage in retail specifically, because in retail, we really deal with people all the time, front-facing, customers especially. And in this day and age where customers are really the drivers, telling retailers, telling brands what they like, what they don't like, what to improve, what to stop. All of this is like free feedback, especially with social media. So we're so accessible with instant feedback, instant complaints, right? So we must put people in our retail teams that are, able to connect with people and do something about it. Feedback. This is really not, though, to discredit my male colleagues. I have superb male colleagues who are just kicking it at work, right? So at the end of the day, it's all up to the individual.
Yeah, it's more of the individual, right?
Individual, correct. But it's up to us then to use our strengths and apply them at work in the best way possible.
Okay. But what do you think is the most, if you could put it to, if you could put it down to something, what do you think females would have advantage of? I mean, is there a single advantage that women have? Maybe the softer part, maybe the persuasion part, maybe the
To put it simply, I think emotional connection.
Okay.
So whatever they choose to do with that emotional connection.
But some men are emotional too, right? I mean.
Yeah, my husband is. But yeah, again, it's not really to generalize, but I do feel that we are built differently and we have certain advantages than the other.
Okay. Dinah, do you?
Okay, so for me, is if I have to pick one that is very typical associated to women, actually I'm very in sync with what Vivi is saying, right? I don't think it's that competition. We are very different. But if there's one that I have to pick just to have this topic is people like to talk about women being able to multitask, but
right.
but I personally.
But that's true, right? I mean, that's sort of true.
I'm not sure if it's true because I can't multitask. For me, it's like always one thing at a time. What's more urgent and what's more important. Then I can do like more proper rather than like touch and go. So in my opinion, an advantage was that is usually overlooked is that competitive edge of soft skills, right? Where we with these soft skills we're able to build trust. And we tend to focus on inspiring, caring, encouraging the team, and therefore, motivate them. So I think I personally tend to spend a lot more time in terms of talking to the team, detecting their aspiration, put them in roles that can help them grow. And if they have any fears, I try to remove those fears for them, and encourage them to be in that trusted environment to be able to come up with inspiring ideas so that we can innovate and stuff like that, right? So that's where I'll say that the advantage is that empathy and that soft skills.
But people have coined this term lady boss, right? To denote someone obviously more tough compared to male bosses. I personally think that lady bosses are scarier than male bosses.
I think that's by the men who are intimidated by the women. That's all.
Oh, okay. So it's the intimidation thing.
No, I mean like there's. I think it's instead of focusing on that. I mean, like you can when there's change, there's always there's always resistance to change, and so women in leadership is if you rewind back like thousands of years, I mean, this is still a relatively new phenomenon, and we still have much more way to go. But instead of focusing on that, what we should be focusing on is literally, I tend to think of because you asked what's the natural advantage that women have. Think of it from a consumer standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a population standpoint. We're half of the population, and so therefore and holders of the purse for the most part, household. So as women business leaders, as women leaders, we tend to understand. We have the ability to understand more because and the workforce more because that's the population.
Yeah, agree. Okay. Okay. The next question we'll address on the digital transformation industry. What would you say to businesses, which are still, they don't want to jump on the digital bandwagon? This is I read somewhere it was reported that the Japanese-based luxury car bag maker, he absolutely doesn't want to go digital. He quotes his quote, to keep ahead with the times, people focus on productivity and efficiency or convenience. If we chase after those, we can't make products that complement and are useful to our lives. So, what do you think? I mean, he doesn't want to go online. He prefers the one-on-one touch, the personal touch. So, what do you think? I mean, do you think that businesses like this have an opportunity to survive in the current times?
So I tend to think of it as, what has digital really done? It's connecting consumers, customers with the product a lot faster. So at the end of the day, in this digital world, customer is actually the ultimate winner. And so today, customers are expecting to transact digitally now. And so I don't think that if you're not able to transact that way and you're not serving your customer, if you have, so for this guy, if his customer demands still one-on-one, perfectly fine. But I think for the most part, consumers now are demanding to be able to
have the choice, right?
Convenience. And what we're trying to see, they want the choice. It's anytime, anywhere. If I'm in a store and if I'm at a mall, I want to be able to buy from there. If I'm at home, I want to be able to.
So it's the omni-channel retail thing, not so much purely digital or not so much purely, brick and mortar, but more of the omni-channel, which is a combination of both, right?
Yeah, but generally speaking, I think that we today are in a world that's business world that's digital by default. So if you are not making your way to go on your digital journey, then you will be actually left behind. I don't think it's optional anymore.
Okay. How about you, Diana? What do you think about this? Do you think they are losing out if they don't go online?
I'm on the digital platform, so I do agree. I do agree on the omni-channel. Not just the business, right? I do agree. Customer is at the center of everybody's business, right? And if you don't win the customer, you're not catching up. And to us, it's not only just sell. It's also engagement. It's also creating that whole, how do we entertain people so that they keep coming back to us and so on. So it's very broad in terms of really using data to understand the consumer and build your business around consumer engagement strategies, right? Whether it's your product, is your product user-friendly? If it's not user-friendly, they're just going to turn you off and goodbye. And what is the consumer behavior? What are they, what is the trend now, right? So we have to quickly learn all these trends and be able to fulfill the consumer's needs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe?
If I could offer a slightly different view to Serena and Diana, basically, for Fashion Valley and Duck, 80% of our business is online. So we are very much digital focused. But I do find that with COVID, with the pandemic, so many businesses are forced online. Online marketing is just crazy now. I see ads so much. It's right? So the online space is getting pretty crowded. So I think for a brand, for a retailer, not so much a platform, but for a brand to really stand out, you need to start thinking about your physical presence and visibility, because people are not going to stop going to malls. So you need to be strong in both. I really believe that, digital and also physical stores.
Okay, but if for the person just starting out in business, I mean, obviously going to the brick and mortar route would take a lot of capital, right? So then the digital route would be the obvious route, right?
Oh no, I think that's a very wrong perception that digital is cheap.
It's not cheap, but it's relatively easier, because to build a brick and mortar business, obviously you have to rent the place, you have to. Is that not more? Does that not cost more than digital businesses?
I think to open a store, you'd have at least a few $100,000 to open one store, right? For online as well, there's a lot of investment costs into the server, into the warehousing, into operations, into payments, and all sorts of tech enhancements constantly. So to say the investment is less is not true.
It's not true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also with shipping, for a company like ours, we ship internationally, we ship all over.
But then I was thinking more of a startup business, not so much the business of your size, but more of a person who wants to start up a business. So digital route will obviously be cheaper.
To get started, it is much easier now these days. Cost of entry is actually a lot lower because typically now what we're seeing is the rise of social commerce too, i.e. you have a product, you can put it on, you can sell via Instagram, you can get it delivered. It's the cost of starting a business is actually a lot lower now. And then as your business grows, so the point I was trying to make just now around digital, it's not just so much the selling portion of it. When you think about the digital transformation of retail in particular, in other industries too, business, there's the front side of digital, i.e. how you sell,
Right.
the middle side, i.e. so can you leverage digital tools to manage your inventory better, to manage your customers, to do mass emails, and do all these different things that would traditionally be very manual and require a lot of people. Now digital actually allows you to do that, so lower your overhead costs. And then of course, how do you use digital to then innovate thereafter? So this is what I was talking about as far as like it's no longer an option. Like you have to really think about how do you leverage digital to be better, faster, and cheaper,
right?
And also improve your overall customer experience. And customer experience can be, it's not all online. It could also, how do you engage? And so you could engage offline as
both ways, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So if I can just add the consumer engagement that I was referring to is that we first started everything online, right? So that whole online experience is how can we engage consumer online, and that's where we did the shoppertainment, live streaming and stuff like that. But last year, what we did was we collaborated with a mall and we did O2O. So online to offline interaction. So basically, we have millions of customers online. How do we also drive them to a mall for that experience, right? And believe it or not, on a weekend, we still are able to help drive increase traffic to a mall by, like, if I'm not wrong, 2 to 3 times more traffic over the weekend. So you think mall would have their own traffic already, but we could be driving more. So when we look at this omni-channel focus, we actually are building that whole 360 consumer experience. Wherever the consumer are, wherever they choose to be, we're there.
Right.
So yeah, but we didn't do a lot of the O2O after that because of the COVID and the limitations. So we continue to build the business online. But if you ask me, will we go back to O2O? Yes, definitely.
So that's the way forward. You agree, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Can we take some questions now? Guys, we'll just do one last question before we take some questions from the floor. Well, what is the single biggest challenge you face as a I think this is a bit similar to the earlier question, but what is the single biggest challenge you face as a female in the industry? Just one each. I think it's a similar question.
Maybe I can start.
Yes, Vivi, yes.
On a more very real issue is what a lot of women face who have started families. So I say the single biggest challenge for woman leader is to juggle home and career, right? So I think in that sense, a lot of women can relate to this, and a lot of women talk about this as well, which is great because now we have a support system. And I think the easiest solution for that is definitely to have a really good support system. And with your husband, especially your spouse, you need to have that expectations talk of like, what can you do? What can't you do? What do each other, what roles do each other play for that? So I think a lot of women don't do that and then end up getting really stressed.
Vivi, you are very open with your family life and your work life and through your Instagram account, right? You have, I think, quite a following. Would you say that I mean, you and your husband work together, right?
Yes.
So you guys founded the company together?
Yes.
So he does the operation side and you do more of the marketing and selling?
He's the CEO of the whole.
Yeah, he's the CEO, right?
I'm more of the creative function.
Okay, so obviously, I mean, you work well together, right?
We're okay.
So obviously.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Serena, for people who like to start businesses, right? Digital businesses. I mean, where does MDEC come in that sense? Does MDEC provide any support for people who want to start businesses?
Yeah, so we provide a lot of support, and it's really around the education aspect of it, because it's the know-how. We share the know-how. So I mentioned just now one of the things that we've done over the years, which is quite expanded, as part of our initiative to help educate micro entrepreneurs. It's this program around digital marketing. So it's really, and we're partnering with the large platforms for the content, but it's basically helping to teach people, how do you go online? How do you leverage social media? How do you set up your store? How do you go on this journey, if you will? And so we've got like a specific program around that. And then last year, because we were trying to actually scale that a little more, we were partnering with the private sector to help. So we were so it's like platforms like Lazada would help train the micro entrepreneurs to actually get the know-how to be able to come online. How do you onboard yourself to these platforms? But that doesn't just stop there. And so it's literally more education and training. If you go to goecommerce.my, free online modules to help entrepreneurs go on their digital journeys. And then that doesn't just continue to stop there at the e-commerce side of things. We have this program, this program called 100 Go Digital, which is all about like helping businesses digitalize the middle part of their business and whatnot. So
it's at all levels in that sense. It is for the one who wants to get into business, and then the one which is already in business. So you provide support.
Exactly.
So how do they do that? I mean, how do they get in touch with MDEC? Just through the website?
Yeah, so you can go to goecommerce.my, and so there's a lot of information on there about just starting your e-commerce journey, and then that links to a lot of the other things that we do as well. But that's a starting point. And of course, all this started with in-person training when we first started through our network of trainers. But then everything pivoted online last year, and now 90% of the training is done online for that. And so we've got plenty of success stories in terms of just being able to know how to make that pivot from offline to online. We continue to provide this know-how around that.
All right. Okay, maybe we'll take some questions from the audience. There's one question here for any one of you guys who think it's suitable. The question is, how will the O2O landscape change for the retail industry in Malaysia by 2030? And what's your advice to startups on this? Anyone?
Do you want me to take
Diana?
this?
Yeah, Diana.
Okay, so for us, it's like I think there's a few stats that Serena has shared, right? So like SMEs are coming on board, they're digitizing their business and so on. So for us is more of how do we as the platform connect the consumer to the sellers, right? The sellers have businesses, and we're the platform. As the platform, we have responsibility to connect these two ends, right? To us, customers are both the sellers and the customers who are buying. So how do we facilitate this as seamless as possible? So we use technology to enhance that customer experience, but also if the consumer is offline and they prefer offline, then how do we also connect that? Right. So to me is we're using multiple channels, like even on television, when we do ads on television, we try to put in QR codes and we're trying to put in stuff that connects them to the app, so that we make we make the shopping experience of the purchasing behavior as easy as possible for the consumer, so that the sellers can benefit.
Right.
So for us, is in terms of training the sellers, we have Lazada University, and on Lazada Lazada University is where all the new sellers, if they want to join Lazada, they sign up on Lazada University.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yes, we do have. And on Lazada University, they sign up, they get a first 60 to 90 days hand-holding. So they have a dedicated person who would actually hand-hold, answer their every single question, because we can't do face-to-face. So we give them someone that they can talk to, someone that's familiar with, and they can ask any question, from the most simple things like, how do I print my, delivery
Is this free,
bill
or
and so on.
is it at a fee?
It's free. It's free. So at the moment, it's free. It's part of our package Kedai Pintar. We work very closely with MDAC actually, you know, in terms of us growing the SMEs, right? So it's all free. We funded it. We actually removed all the barriers of entry so that they can come in and learn the business in the first 30 to 90 days. And in the 30 to 90 days, they get hand holding. We have business partner who would, you know, call them, check in on them. How are you doing? Are you taking the right photos? Are your store beautiful enough for consumer to, you know, because if your store is not beautiful, people don't trust you, right? So those
right.
are
If it's too beautiful, people don't trust you also, right?
No, not necessarily. So trust is important when you shop online, yeah. Those are the things that we do. But connecting online to offline is something that as a platform we do constantly. So how do we help the sellers first set up their store? And then eventually they have to participate in our campaign so that if we run offline campaign, they participate and they get to enjoy that traffic that we drive, right? So like I said, it's engaging consumers at every single touch point and try to connect them online to offline, whether it's radio station, whether it's TV station, whether it's at the mall, we try to connect the dots.
Okay.
Yeah, for us as well, if I could add to that, basically our group is basically trying to make it more omni-channel, and that's our strategy moving forward. So again, completely agree with what Diana said. It's very important for you to be at every touch point of the customers, right? For us, 80% online, 20 retail. But
80% online.
Yeah, but it's still very important to have both digital strength and also physical visibility strength, right? So for us, for example, we have our app, but we also have store mode on our Fashion Valley app. So before you go to the store, you can already check what's in the store. So if there's something you can't find there, then maybe it's in another store. So you can actually browse before you make the trip to go to the store. And then once you're in store, you can also shop online, and your profile is basically everywhere. And I think they shouldn't even discount mobile shopping and social shopping. Don't discount the power of WhatsApp, the power of Telegram. I think whatever tech enhancements that we're doing, we always focus on mobile first and then website. So there's a shift in shopping online to now living online. I think people need to really care about that.
How many stores? Sorry. How many stores do you have, Vivi? Physical
Right
stores?
now I have 10 stores, but
10 stores.
we're doing a rollout plan of a lot more stores. It was supposed to be 2020, but we paused that first, so hopefully can roll out soon.
Okay. Yes, Serena, you.
Yeah, so I was going to add, because the question really touches on what do we expect in the future, where are we going? So I would summarize it as three things. So number one, both Diana and Vivi talked about it, it's the integration of technology, because customers now it's nonstop. You're engaging all the time. Of course, there's positives and negatives of that, but as a seller, we leverage that. And so the integration of technology, today we've got social buying, leveraging all the platforms. We're going to start to see a rise in live streaming. That's another trend that's happening now. And then Vivi talked a little bit about the whole virtual stores. And then content marketing is another one where you don't even realize that you're marketing, because you might be reading an article about something. And, that could be linked directly to something else. So content marketing. So integration of technology. Two, it's data, because businesses now are as you transact more digitally, you'll start to collect more information about your customers. So then you're able to target your customers even more. So then Vivi will know that, hey, I'm actually shopping in the morning, and so she'll send my ads in the morning and whatnot. So it's leveraging data to target your customers. And then finally, it's this trend of cross-border. And so we'll start to see, because as shipping costs go down, as there's trade, particularly in ASEAN, there's talk right now about how do you do more ASEAN transactions. And so we'll start to see more cross-border. In fact, government is always telling we need more exports. And so we're supporting all the businesses out there and really encouraging, giving businesses the know-how to be exporters. And so those three things, I think it's the future.
But the growth in ASEAN is definitely not equal. I think Malaysia and Singapore make up about a third of the entire online retail, and with the rest really just struggling to catch up. I think only about 6% in Philippines, right, do online shopping. So
they're catching up really fast, and so that's why. And what you'll see is the adoption part goes quite quickly. And so if you're not starting to think already now, you're a business, you're not thinking now, like what's your export strategy? Because the adoption will come quite quickly, as we've seen in Malaysia, for example.
Okay, let's take another question. I think Vivi made this remark earlier, that remark about how women are probably more emotionally sensible. It's interesting, this viewer notes. Do you think the fact that men are less encouraged to express their feelings contribute to this phenomenon? And somehow it shows in retail businesses, but this is debatable, Iman.
Wow, okay, that's very interesting. Wow. I didn't say women are emotionally sensible. I just said women are more emotionally connected. We have a crave for connection. I can't speak on behalf of men, but I don't think we encourage them not to speak out. I think we do ask them, like, what do you think? What are your feelings about this? So I'm not really sure how to answer that question. But I think, yeah, I've never really thought of it that way. But I know that men and women are built differently.
Okay. The Singapore, there's this question from Singapore, for Vivi, as from Esther Min. She says, "Thank you all panelists for your valuable insights." She says that she's a community builder based in Singapore, and she is keen to know your thoughts on the key strand of digital specifically in the Malaysian market.
Sorry, the key what?
The key strand of the digital landscape, I presume. The digital landscape, what is the key strand of the Malaysia's digital landscape? What do you think is our key strand?
Strength. What you mean? What we're strong at, right?
Yeah, what we're strong at. Yeah.
I think Malaysia, we're very fortunate very fortunate to start a business in Malaysia, because there's already quite a developed ecosystem. When we first started, it was more difficult to find like all these tech guys, the web developer, but now it's just so much easier. There's so much support, MDAC, Magic, all of it, right? So I think being in Malaysia, there are so many establishments and organizations that help businesses go digital. Look at Serena, for example, right? And then you have the power of really strong marketplaces like Diana's one, that you can leverage on. So I definitely think if you want to go digital, Malaysia is an amazing country to start.
Okay. I suppose you agree, Serena.
Oh, yes, thank you very much for saying that. But I would also say, it is, when you're thinking about businesses, at the end of the day, businesses are about customers, right? And so when you think about the digital customer, Malaysians are actually quite advanced and developed in that. So the willingness to try. So certainly this past year alone, we saw a lot of consumers, like I said just now, 5 years worth of consumer digitization compressed in 1 year. So certainly the market, the customers, the consumers are very digitally savvy in that regard, willing to try. And then even when you look at the platform economy, so innovation, so Uber and Grab, when they first started, it wouldn't have succeeded had it not been for the willing customer, in this case Malaysians, to try that out. And so therefore, I say from a consumer standpoint, one of the advantages of Malaysia is the fact that you've got quite a developed consumer population, and so which makes it very easy to test out new things for digital businesses.
Previously, like a few years back when we just started, people were like, I don't have online banking lah, or I don't have credit card lah. How do I buy on Fashion Valley? So what they would do is we would email them the confirmation, and then they would have to go to the bank to deposit the money, take the receipt, scan the receipt, email it back to us. That was 8 years ago.
When? 8 years ago.
Yeah, and then I think thanks to the foreign investment from all the marketplaces and educated all Malaysians to shop online. I think now we're such fast adopters of technology.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Exactly.
If I can also add one more point, I think the MCO helped us also come together, right? I think last year when we saw the Cameron farmers having to throw away vegetables, and when we jump in to help them, all of Malaysians were like so supportive of it. And then after a while, we started to run campaigns like, with the government, Jom Beli Local and stuff like that, right? So it creates this whole, coming together, supporting local businesses and helping local grow together as opposed to, buying overseas and so on. So that's something I think as a whole has actually grown. Malaysians not only are savvy shopping online, but they're also very, supportive of local businesses. And we're starting to see that in that younger generation of the shoppers.
That's the impact of Fashion Valet, supporting local businesses, right? So really thanks to Malaysian customers that we are where we are today.
Right. Diana, I just want to just one question about the quality of the products that are sold online, right? I mean, a lot of people want to know whether stuff that they buy online, is it the real stuff or is it fake stuff? Because some of the prices are like super, it's unbelievable, right? So what are your thoughts?
So that's actually a very good question. So as an online marketplace, our customer trust that when they purchase something through our platform, not only that we provide great assortment and quality products at competitive prices, but with an unparalleled customer experience, right? So we need to preserve that trust. We invested greatly in protecting the integrity of Lazada marketplace for consumers, as well as the buyers and sellers, right? So we have we use tech, right? So we have a robust system that checks and controls. And our risk team have these very stringent policies to measure and curb any fraudulent and illicit trading of goods on our platform. So we will remove counterfeit items as soon as we are aware of them. That's why we have Last Mall, right? Last Mall is the branded destination where we are able to attract trust, like huge brands like the Nikes of the world. They will not come to our platform if they can see a lot of counterfeits being sold on our platform, right? So we would suspend or ban sellers from our platform who violate the law. And our team works very closely in terms of consulting with local authorities.
But they're allowed to sell, right? I mean, goods that are
like I said, if
not
we are aware of it, we will remove
take action.
And we will we will take action. If we're not aware of it, then if it happens, then we would if it happens within our platform, then we will do our best, but rather that we need to be informed. But on a day-to-day basis, we have this risk team to take care of. We have Last Mall, and Last Mall is the branded destination to create shopping authentic products. So we give it's guaranteed 100% authentic if you buy on Last Mall, and we give up to 5 times return of your money back if you bought something that is not authentic on Last Mall. Yeah.
Vivi, do you also have a fake product?
No, for us, like I'm very interested in what Diana said, because actually Duck is very impacted by that. Duck has so many counterfeits, thousands of sellers on InstaShop.
Imitation is the best form of flattery, right?
Sure, but it's so annoying. but it does affect us a lot. It's a lose-lose for everyone. For the customers, they think they're buying an original product. For the brands, it really affects the brand identity and the brand trust, because when they receive the products, obviously it's a subpar, it's below par. Like it's just given in plastic, it's just all over, it's terrible. I've seen the photos and all that. So I think we work with marketplaces a lot, Lazada and all of Lazada's competitors that sell that has Duck counterfeits sold on them. And I'd say that they have been very supportive, but the onus is always on brands to tell them. So I do think marketplaces can do a lot more in taking a proactive approach more than reactive. I think especially because the sellers, the counterfeit sellers, have become more sophisticated, more advanced. They find loopholes around it. Like, for example, if Lazada cannot put DUCK, then th'll put D****K.
But it still can be spotted, right?
They're smart, right? So Very smart. So I
Yeah.
think if I may, Diana, give you some suggestions on as a brand owner, right? Maybe marketplaces could invest in like some visual algorithm to like detect logos, maybe prominent logos. For us, maybe the dark silhouette, and many brands right out there. And second, I think maybe it'll be interesting to see if marketplaces demand now that sellers have to put their business registration number on it. Because once you put business registration number, you will be a bit more fearful of selling illegal products. So yeah, that's my
Yeah.
2 cents.
Actually, Lazada does require business registration. So
Okay.
yes, we do.
Is it
So
public?
it's a must. So if you don't have a business registration, you can't operate on Lazada. So it's part of the onboarding that we require. So that's how we control as well. And if somebody does break the rule, we know who to go after, not just a person which we don't know who.
Right.
So those are the things that we do to protect. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next question. What are the major challenges to be anticipated in e-commerce, mainly for those owners transitioning from the traditional way to the digital way? What are the main challenges?
For
to
me,
be
I guess from a brand's perspective, a retailer's perspective, is definitely competition. It's online marketing. Online digital marketing is really a skill. So you really got to find somebody experienced and very skilled to do digital marketing for you. It's really different than physical retail marketing. So any brand to stand out now, I really believe that you need to be a standout in your niche. So if you're promoting fast service, you've got to be the fastest. If you're promoting cheap, you've got to be the cheapest. You've got to almost go to extremes to actually get people's attention. There are a lot of middle safe players that I think that part is very crowded, and I think you'll drown if you play it safe. So you've got to find that one standout in your product, that one USP that you just want to shout.
So how do your products stand out? I mean, what do you?
So for Duck, we've been around for 7 years. So people know us as the premium line for scarves, right? So we never have sister lines to drop our prices. We never play in that because there are so many competitors already there. And we really play on the packaging, on the purple. A lot of brands like to experiment. But for us, for 7 years, from day one until now, people know us for purple. So we really just shout out purple and kind of own the color. So catching people's attention, making sure quality products are there, catching people's attention is one thing. But if your product isn't great,
then how do you sustain that, right? You can't catch their attention a second time.
So it's all going to be like a combination of everything, including physical stores as well as digital presence.
Okay. One more question. This one. Why is it that this question comes from Sandra Ng. Why is it that when we have mostly women on the panel, the questions are centered around men, women, attitudes, emotional differences? Why do we need to change this? I kind of agree because this whole women thing is always, it's been debated for the longest time. I mean, why is it even an issue at times? Why do women have to go? Why are women penalized in this sense? I mean, why are the questions never centered on men? Right? So is this what are your thoughts on this? Is this just exclusive to women? Why do we always talk about women having to, balance things and stuff? Why aren't these questions, directed at men?
Honestly, for me as invitees and guests of seminars, I have no idea why I'm being called for women.
I know, right? Yeah.
Women, these women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I would love to be on a panel with a more mixed panel and talk about men and women working together, playing up our strengths together. I find it really sad when there is a lot of talk about women and women retail, women this, women that, but influence is all women.
I get what you mean.
Yes, where are the men? The men need to be in this conversation as well.
Okay, and one more question. No more questions. That's all. Okay, guys. Do you guys have any last minute wrap up comments that you'd like to make before we wrap it up?
Well, maybe if I can go first. Thank you so much for having all of us on this panel. I think if I could leave the audience with 3 takeaways, number one, there needs to be a merits-based approach to putting both men and women in leadership roles, but only after there is a level playing field. And number 2, digital is important, but as space becomes more crowded, you really need to think of a more omni-channel strategy for all brands, including physical stores. That's why for Duck, we're rolling out more stores, i.e. more touch points, right? And number 3, the last one from me is just play out your strengths. So if women are scientifically proven to be more emotionally connected, then play that up to your career and consider climbing the ladder in retail industry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Diana?
Okay, so for me is don't be afraid of digitalizing of your business. It's not that scary. Where we have people here to help the businesses to come on board. First, don't be afraid. I think you need to have that courage to be able to pivot your business so that you are there where the consumers are. That's one. 2 is build that uniqueness and awareness of your brand so that people know who you are, especially in the local business, right? A lot of people like to be a me too. What is your unique selling point, and how can you be competitive, right? Because otherwise you'll just be like, sometimes you go to a platform and you search for certain things, and when you search for one item, all the same item appears. Like you want to stand out, right? You want to stand out, so put in a little bit more effort in building your brand and building your store so that people recognize you over time. And yeah, keep exploring, keep innovating.
All right, Serena?
So I come back to number 1, customer centricity. So know your customer, really, really, really understand, because at the end of the day, digital is all about making it better, faster, cheaper, and improving that customer experience. We talked about customers. And at the end of it, the third thing is just own it. So there's a lot of talk about women this, women that. Just own it. Leverage your strengths and go for it.
All right. So we've come to the end of the panel session. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks once again, and thank you to all the viewers as well. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, we hope you have enjoyed the opening power panel as much as I did. It was a really spirited, vivacious discussion by so many strategically minded queens. So thank you, Vivi, Diana, Serena, and Yvonne for a powerful discussion. And it's most a great honor for us to have all of you at this event so that we can learn from you. Guys, thank you so much for staying with us until the end of the opening session of Smart Retail Live Virtual Conference. And as I have mentioned earlier, we're giving away 3 cool gadgets at each of the 4 sessions of the event. And all you need to do is complete a short survey by scanning the QR code here. Not that one, this one. And complete the survey. Go to bit.ly/star Smart Retail Survey 1. And you can stand a chance to win any of these wonderful prizes. So we are just getting started. We have 3 more awesome sessions during these 2 days. Later in the afternoon, we'll be covering customer experience. Our Terabyte partner, Dapat Vista, will be kicking off this afternoon with a presentation on inclusive CX. Then there will be an industry panel discussion, which will be moderated by our knowledge partner KPMG in Malaysia. And the panel will be joined by a lineup of senior business leaders from AirAsia, Love, Bonito Malaysia, and Ninja Van Malaysia, my favorite provider and sender of Sephora cosmetics. Well, I hope you're as excited as I am for the afternoon's program. And I want to let you know a little bit more about the event agenda or any of the speaker profiles. And if you're interested, you can scan the QR code that is located at the top right of your screen. So that's this QR code, or you can go to bit.ly/smart retail agenda. Please also share the Smart Retail event program with your colleagues and friends. And if you need any assistance from us, please email us at events@thestar.com.my. I'm signing out, but this page will remain live in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So remember to complete the short survey and stand a chance to win one of the 3 prizes. Thank you. My name is Myra Baiti, and I look forward to seeing you again later this afternoon at 2 p.m. Bye.
always have a support structure that you can rely on, having people that can always deliver, and at the very least, those that can show progress on a daily basis.
Kita adalah brand holder. Kita kena yakin dengan brand kita. So sebelum kita nak meyakinkan orang dengan brand kita kena yakinkan diri kita dahulu. So macam mana? Ilmu, knowledge. Pergi belajar. Tak belajar, tak tahu. Saya buka syarikat saya sendiri sebab masa itu saya yakin masyarakat tak boleh bergerak tanpa motivasi.
புதுசா வித்தியாசமா நீங்க யோசிச்சு ஒரு மார்க்கெட்ல டிமாண்டா இருக்கிற ப்ராடக்ட் நீங்க கொண்டு வந்தீங்கன்னா பயனியராகவும் ஆகலாம். அதே சமயத்துல மக்கள் திருப்பி வந்து உங்கள்கிட்ட வாங்கிட்டு இருப்பாங்க.
把你的生意放上网络平台，我朋友是做网络卖衣服的生意，他的生意是不断的在增长。我起步的时候是跟去银行贷款，所以他说我的规模也是太小，所以他是不接受我的贷款的。有一天我上网寻找贷款，然后过后就找到 IMSME， 过后我去 click 进去申请表格。第二天 CGC 的有一个顾问打来跟我说，你可以尝试用 P2P 的平台，过后就成功了。
The great thing about this whole CGC ISME program is that it's no collateral and you can grow for as little as 1,000 ringgit to as much as 5 million. I went online and went to the page, registered, logged in, and just keyed in my details. And from there, within a matter of days, things were already set in motion. So it's really that straightforward and that simple. I was able to get it within a matter of weeks. I think everyone can too.
IMSME ஃபண்ட் வந்து நாங்கள் வந்து அப்ளை பண்ணியிருந்தோம், எங்களுக்கு கிடைச்சிச்சு. அது மூலிமா எங்கள் பிஸ்னஸையும் வந்து எக்ஸ்பேண்ட் பண்ணோம். 10% வந்து இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணோம் எங்கள் சேல்ஸை. இது மூலிமா IMSME ஃபண்ட் வந்து ரொம்ப உதவியாக இருந்துச்சு எங்களுக்கு.
Sebenarnya dalam business, fund is everything. You have fund, you can go bigger. You don't have fund, you cannot go anywhere. CGC banyak membantu saya untuk saya go and move further sebenarnya. Dan at the end, saya dah ada branch baru dekat Alustah selepas saya dapat dana daripada CGC. I have no fund problem at all after that. Jadi dengan IMSME memang banyak sangat ubah hidup saya dan banyak membantu mengembangkan bisnes saya.
感谢 IMSME 帮我的生意更上一层楼。